What?
There's still some people filing in. Okay, don't do that. Oh my God.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all so much for coming. This session is a dialogical model for reading contemporary art, and we are very honored to have Rachel Shalita here as our speaker this morning. Before turning it over to Rachel, please allow me to make a few clerical notes. The session will run for 1 hour and 10 minutes, and we'll try to build in time for questions and answers in the last few minutes. Please help yourself to refreshments outside the cafe, and the nearest bathrooms, should you need them, are as you head down towards the Matisse on either the left or the right side, respectively. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to ask somebody wearing a badge. And I should also mention that in the case of a fire alarm going off, you should look to the room steward positioned right outside the door to give you directions. But we don't anticipate that happening. So as a final reminder, please turn off your phones for the duration of our talk. And we thank you again for your participation in the conference. And without further ado, here is Rachel.
Good. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. No, it's still morning. I come from Israel. I live in Tel Aviv, and I teach in art college near Tel Aviv, 40 minutes to the north and east from Tel Aviv. Our students are art students and art education as well. I attended few IVLA conferences back in the late 90s and the beginning of the 2000s, and I'm very glad to be here again and to present you the dialogical model for reading contemporary art. Because I don't have so much time, I will only say at the beginning that I found that not traditional, but the conventional way of analyzing art, what we call language of art, it helps us to understand art through terms like color, texture, composition, etc., is not very helpful when we reach contemporary art. When I look at an installation where there are many components, or when I look at video art, these terms are no longer valid, are no longer helping me. So this was the motive to try to develop a new way to deal with contemporary art. So I only tried it with students and with public, with viewers on contemporary art. I'm sure it can help also in other periods, but I don't have any experience in doing it, except for contemporary art, here and now, latest works of art. I'll talk and I'll read. I don't trust my English so well, so much so sometimes I'll read, sometimes I'll talk. Forgive me. I developed the model, which I call the dialogical model for reading contemporary art, through many years of working with children and adults in art galleries in the Tel Aviv Museum of Art, by watching other museum teachers doing this as well, and teaching art students in my courses, especially in my course Museum Education. This is how dialogical art, dialogical talk with children looks. It is very informal. The adult who leads the talk sits with the children. They are invited to look, the children are invited to look at the work of art, usually of their own choice, as well as to relate to their friends in an animated talk within themselves. I have read many books during the years about art, about education, but these 5 books were most meaningful for me. Here they are. The book about psychology of art appreciation, Terry Barrett's book about art interpretation, which I use a major term in my model I took from Barrett. John Armstrong, maybe you know him, Move Closer, An Intimate Philosophy of Art. Bonham and Kaiki from the Metropolitan Museum, when they were in the Metropolitan Museum when they wrote the book Interpretation as Experience. And Bosch from Eulalia Bosch from Barcelona, The Pleasure of Beholding the Visitor Museum. This is the book I wrote 2 years ago describing this model. Unfortunately, at present, it can be read only in Hebrew, so it's not useful for you now. I'm talking about the encounter between broad public and non-professional public, adults as well as children with contemporary art. Broad public is not art students, art teachers, artists, museum and gallery professionals, etc., and it's mainly broad public people who are not professional. Contemporary art, as I said before, is the art that is made now, today. Eulalia Bosch from Barcelona says contemporary art is for contemporary people. And then she says children are necessarily contemporary. They cannot be otherwise. The absolute lack of knowledge about the world, which for an adult would be disastrous, is an unmistakable sign of the future pushing them forward. Children's contemporary gaze is then the ideal complement for the historical sense grown-ups acquire. What is important at the beginning of the dialogical art, dialogical process, is to look, experience, then to talk. The assumption of the dialogical process at the first stage, and I emphasize only the first stage, is that children as well as adults can read contemporary art based solely on their knowledge and experience of the world, without any supplementary information, just by looking and thinking and talking. The meeting with the work of art has double access. It's looking at the world, it's what the viewers see, experience, think, understand, and feel, remember, recall, and what interested, aroused curiosity, moved, was important to the artist. So in this model, we don't forget the artist and his intentions. It's not only what I see in the work of art and how I understand it, but also trying to understand what was interesting to the artist. And I already said that I have to emphasize that the artist's view on his work of art is not to persuade that is not more important, but it is as important as well as our views. Looking at a work of art is an it and me experience, which links the work and the viewer, which means that in order to understand a work of art, I cannot explain it to you. You have to experience it through your own experience. If you are not willing to open up yourself and to experience it, it cannot talk to you. It has to be a dialogue. That is an axiom, that it has to be a dialogue. And I hear many Sometimes people say, this is boring, I don't understand it, and I say, it is boring because there are many reasons, but it might be because you don't open yourself, and you have to participate in the process. Looking in artwork doesn't have a message. It has an aboutness. Aboutness is the term that I took from Terry Barrett. He talks about aboutness. And I would like to give you an example of what I mean, that it doesn't have a message, but it has an aboutness. Aboutness, as I said, the artist invites, proposes, asks us to enter into something that might be interesting, challenging, moving, stunning, meaningful, troubling, intriguing, stimulating. This something is the aboutness of the artwork. The aboutness can be about the world, can be about the artist, can be about art. A work of art can have more than one aboutness. A good work, actually a good work of art will have probably more than one aboutness. I'll give only this example of Picasso's Guernica that was painted in 1937. Picasso set before us a private story without words. The story asks us to look at how one act of war destroys what existed only moments before in now previous life. If we wish to look for a message, like an anti-war message, this is of course possible. You will have to create it as a construct or a narrative expressed in words. This is how they use in Guernica, the town in Spain, the Basque town in Spain. They used this picture as a message, as an anti-war message. It's in the street of the town. It's made of ceramics. It's not the original, of course. And they use it also. I'm sorry. And you see here the museum, the Peace Museum that was built in Guernica, and they use the Guernica in it. The painting is, they use it in many, many ways to transmit the message of anti-war. But the painting itself is about the aboutness. This is the message. The message is anti-war, but the aboutness of Picasso's Guernica is the explosive moment of a bombing attack on a peaceful community, people, structures, animals, a world turned upside down. If you are looking to speak a message, it will have to come after the image, after the aboutness. So the method of the dialogical process, it's based on free conversation. We have to use open conversation, not yes and no questions, that not leading questions to answers that the teacher knows before, but a completely free conversation. And it has to have also non-judgmental and supporting environment and cooperation between the animator and the people. When I say free conversation, it means in its extreme that when I lead a dialogical process, I can do it in a place, in a museum, in an exhibition that I've never seen before. I can go in and use this process without knowing anything about what's happened. I'm in charge of the process, not in the first stage, not on the knowledge about the art, but only the process. I already said that information, contextualization about the artwork may be provided only after the process. Okay. I'm showing you a photograph of a work of art. The work itself existed in situ. The photograph is not the artwork. Now I can start doing the process. I can tell you that it was made by an Israeli artist. Her name is Leslie Kunda Robin. She lives in a small town near Tel Aviv, and it was made between 2001 and 2005. I can start by this, and I can also start by saying nothing, just showing you the work of art. This is a kind of decision that I may do, but I thought that because you're not acquainted with Israeli art, maybe I should say that this is an Israeli art that was made about 10 years ago. The dialogical process is based on 7 stages expressed by question. Each stage starts with a question. I have to say that in a free conversation, these stages can merge into one another, and I present them now very clearly separated from one another, only as a pedagogical method. So this is the first question. Here's a work of art. What is your first reaction to what you see? I don't ask, what do you see? I ask, what is your reaction to what you see? Because I learned from experience that people have first reaction even before they really fully understand what they see or see. So they have a first reaction for the art, for the work of art, anti the work of art. They have something, they feel something. And I want to have this stage part of the conversation. Okay, generally groups of children respond to this freely. Adults often have much greater difficulty. By asking for first reaction, I also want to legitimate first responses of different natures, not necessarily feelings. I noticed that many conversations with children about art start by the question, what do you feel? And when I say, what is your reaction to what you see, I give legitimation also for other kind of reactions. These are some of the responses that I got from my students in the art school, and also from children. I collected some of the reaction. It looks like a woman. It's sad. Why would someone knit on a tree? Is this art? It reminds you of a woman who was on Big Brother, who always knitted on trees. It reminds me of the dress of Little Red Riding Hood. All these are responses, and I say, in the dialogical art process, I repeat all these questions, and I say, this is a memory, this is an opinion, this is a judgment, this is a feeling. I reflect the kind of response that I get. So, as I said, response can be all this list, and I want them already on the first stage to understand what was their reaction, because their reaction is their entrance to the work of art. They enter the work of art through the judgment, through feeling, through memory. So it's important to know what was the entrance, what was there. Second question is what you see. But I emphasize that it's not only to improve the way people look or to improve their observation. From my experience, children have a much more detailed observation than I do usually. So I don't think it's my goal, it's not my first goal to improve their observation. But by asking them to describe, to say what they see, I want to establish the components of the work of art. This is the stage that is very important. What are the essential components that make up the work of art? because later on, when we will want to make an interpretation for the work of art, we will have to rely on these components to see if they come into the interpretation, if they are left out, etc. So at this stage, it's not only observation, it's also the how do you say, the building blocks of the interpretation are set now at this stage. So some of the responses. Of course, an old tree, probably an olive, a trunk with splits in two directions, with one side cut and the second has branches. The main trunk is dressed with a red sweater. The sweater is knitted right onto the tree. The sweater is nailed to the tree. The sweater is worn and full of holes. This is the kind of descriptions that I'm looking for. Third question is, what does each of the components, elements, represent? Of course, if I had a longer time of a lecture, I would explain why I think that you cannot enjoy art if you don't understand what a representation is. You have to understand what a representation is. But I take it for granted now that the word represent, that each element in the work of art represents something. So these are some of the responses: old olive tree, old age, Israeliness, life experience, connection to the earth, nature, knitting, women's work, caring, devotion, world of long ago, industriousness, red, femininity, sexuality, seductiveness, blood, danger, holes in the sweater, violence, worn out, etc. I'll go on. Fourth question is, what are the links between the elements? I tried to figure out what are the links between all these elements. In this work, we have only very few elements, so I'll skip this stage now, but usually if there are many elements, we have an installation with many elements, we start by connecting 2 and 3 together and see how they relate to each other. So now I go to the fifth question, which is what this work of art is about. What is the aboutness of this work of art? First, possible aboutness. And I have to say also something, that in each aboutness, there is one of the elements that is emphasized. We focused more on one of the elements to understand the aboutnesses. So in this aboutness, we mainly focus on the tree, and the work of art, the first possible aboutness is the work of art is about the relationship between man and nature. It might be about either exploitation of nature as well as about compassion towards nature. But it is the first aboutness. First aboutness divided into 2 options: that we exploit nature or that we care for nature. We are compassionate for nature. Second possible aboutness might be this work of art is about an aging woman. That's what my student said. The aging woman, it might suggest a fierce resistance to aging as well as a seductiveness. So this is second possibility. Third possible aboutness of the work of art is violence against uprooting the ancient olive trees as part of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. This is also very cultural. The aboutnesses come from a culture that knows the conflict and knows that olive trees are being uprooted in the West Bank, and this is some students, of course, in my class say this is something that we want to care for the trees that are being uprooted. Another possible aboutness. This is a, okay. A fifth one is completely different. This work of art is about the relationship between a man and a woman, being at the same time caring and loving, but also suffocating. There is another sixth option that I didn't put in the PowerPoint. I forgot to put it, but I had also this answer that this work of art is about being ill, about illness, about a woman who is ill, about overcoming an illness, about the ways you overcome illness, etc. There is no single exhaustive interpretation of any artwork, of course. And I have final question is, do you find this work of art interesting, satisfying, challenging, meaningful, beautiful? I ask all this now after we have gone through all the stages. I did it very quickly now, but usually the process takes about 20, 30, sometimes 45 minutes even the work of art is very complicated, or if people really want to talk and to express themselves. And then I have one further question after the final one. Are you interested in knowing more about the artist? Are you interested in seeing more works of art made by this artist or by other artists who might be engaging with similar issues? So if the answer is yes, we want to know more, then I start to show them this is in Hebrew, but you can read something that was written about this artist. There are internet links, so you can find more information about the artist. And I can show you pictures of the process of making this work of art. So you see that it was knitted on the tree. It was a process of knitting. And then I can show you other works by the same artist. So you see that the tree is what is very important to her. And then I can see other work. I can show other works by the same artist and other works. And I can give a larger context to the work, to this work of art, by showing other works of artists like Christo, like Van Gogh, Danny Caravan, an Israeli artist who works a lot with olive trees, and other works of art that deal with nature materials, outside, etc. Or other works of art that are knitting, using knitting as work. Terry Barrett says that interpretation can be judged by coherence, correspondence, and inclusiveness. And I think that by inclusiveness, he means also that it has to embrace, it has to include as much of the components. So if my aboutness is having in it the olive tree and the red and the knitting and all this, it's a much solid interpretation than interpretation that deals only with the olive tree, only with the red. So it has to be the maximum. Okay, now I say again, the artwork is not necessarily about what the artist wanted it to be. Its meaning should not be limited to the artist's intent. Interpretation is ultimately a communal endeavor, and the community is ultimately self-corrective, which means that sometimes we can see a work of art, make an interpretation, find it aboutnesses, and after 5 years, the aboutnesses change because many things that happen in life and in art. No single interpretation, that I said already, is exhaustive. Good interpretation invites us to see for ourselves and to continue on our own. So this is more pictures of dialogical process with my students. My student is leading the conversation with children. Sometimes they stand, etc. Okay, I give this work of art as an example to show you that not everything that I said is possible. Sometimes we need to say something before we see a work of art. And this is an example. Everything here is already made. And sometimes it's important to say that everything that the artist put together was found in the street. So the decision whether to share some of the information before or not is changing each time, and it depends on the group, on the work of art, etc. But what I'm trying to do is really minimize the information, not give too much information and wait for the question of the children and the adults after the work of art. I would like now to show you another work of art made by an artist, Rafat Hatab, who is also a student in our school and is very known now in Israel. Bedun and One, it's untitled in Arabic. This work is a video art. I'll show you now the video art, and I'll try to analyze the aboutnesses, the different aboutnesses of this work of art that were discussed in my class. This work is now in a permanent collection of the Tel Aviv Museum. So as I said, the name of the artist is Rafat Hatab, and the name of the art is Bidun N1, which means in Arabic untitled. It's from 2009. We see a brackish water rusted by wind. We hear oriental music. We see the filling of a pail with water from what appears to be a pool of water. A young man in black tends to an old olive tree. With a broom, he clears the fallen leaves around the tree trunk. Then something happens. The camera pulls back to reveal that the ancient tree does not stand in a hillside grove, but in a framed raised bed of earth in a city plaza. The plaza, with apartments dwelling in the background, is easily identified by those familiar with the Tel Aviv center as Rabin Square, the open gathering for all various kinds of public space events in Israel, and also the place where Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated. When you look at it, I wanted to stay here. When you look at it, it is, of course, very different than Israeli audience. The location is very known in Israel. And people who know Rafat work also tend to, are influenced by what they see and find different aboutnesses than maybe we will find. So the components are a pool of water, a pail, an olive tree with olives, a man in black. In a video, it is clearly that the components are not static, but are active, performative, like sweeping, like drawing water, caressing the tree trunk, gathering olives, walking, as well as the different points of view of the camera. So as I said, in this place, it's not only, it's really the center of Tel Aviv, in the heart of Tel Aviv. This is where Rabin was killed, and also you see a big monument by a very famous Israeli artist, Yigal Tumakin, a memorial to the Holocaust. So, of course, all these components are in the world, in the work of art, the place, and the surrounding. Personal association and cultural connotations that were said by my students. My students are Arabs and Jews in the same class, so you'll see that the aboutnesses are very different for each other. It depends on the people sitting in the class, in the classroom. Olive tree, so this time people say this, they said Arab life in Israel, connection to the land, to Israel, identity, fertility, olive oil, Holy Land, plenty, but also uprooting of olive trees, as I said before. Olive branch symbolizes peace, of course, together with the doves that inhabit the plaza. Pool of water, which is basically a spraying fountain. Pool of water, spraying fountain have their own associations. Pool of water, water source for people, animals, plants. Spraying water is an artificial water source that might signal also waste and display. Sweeping, not done with a rake but with a broom. The action is double, a sweeping, raking in an agricultural context. The sweeping done by street worker in association, in the association is low labor. And I think that you could see the switch. The first time you see the sweeping as working as an agricultural work, and the second time when you recognize that it has a context, it looked like a work of low labor sweeping the streets of Tel Aviv. Sweeping can be also had also in my class archaeological association. The sweeping, careful, slow, cautious, done at the dig site before the archaeological object is revealed and removed. Rabin Plaza, I already said, it's the center of the town, of the city. And you can always also see, it's not in this picture, but also the town hall of Tel Aviv. So now I will now give some examples of aboutnesses. First aboutness in my class was the tree is in this first aboutness represent the past nature of the center of the city. The tree locked within an unnatural cement frame of the raised bed and surrounded by flagstones of the square is reminder of the city before it was cement and sidewalk. It raises a longing for free nature, for men, women, close association with natural environment, the history of the city built on sand, a city whose one side faces the sea. This is one aboutness that is a little bit nostalgic and says that now cultivating the only tree that is left in the plaza is a reminder of the city that was built on sand, and it's a kind of a nostalgic view on the city. But we have an opposite aboutness. The tree represents another past. The tree is a reminder of the city built on Arab land. It was not merely as in colonial discourse, a space of nature on which there were no inhabitants, virgin space to be conquered. The tree recalls the people who already lived here. So, of course, the fact that the artist is Arab, is an Arab, emphasizes this kind of aboutness that, of course, it reminds us that before the plaza was built, there were olive trees there and Arab used to live there. The Orient music, now highlighted, sent us to relate to a related aboutness, the place of the Arab man in the contemporary built environment of the Jewish city. The man, from his former status as landowner on hills, is an agricultural culture, as independent tiller of his own property, is transposed to a low status of tender of city trash, serving the urban society that is not his. This is a social critic of the status of the Arab population in Israeli society, the Arabs who have become drawers of water and fellers of trees for the nation of overlords. 4. In contrast to the former, low status of the Arab as laborer dispossessed, we also encounter a more romanticized aboutness. The Arab as linked to the land, as empowered by his land and his soil, and as fertile on his land. He reminds us of what he had lost also, what we have lost. It's a little bit like the first one, but there is a kind of a nuance here that reminds us that looks at the Arab society as more connected to the land and to the earth. Another aboutness, the internal conflict for the Arab artist in Israel is Arab compatriots expect of him to dispense traditional Arab values such as connection to the land, longing for his land as symbolized by the olive tree and the labor that involves its cultivation, while he himself actually lives in the city, distant from these values and the geography in which they are embedded. So this is also, if you know Rafat Khattav, who lives in Jaffa, who never lived in a village and doesn't represent any village or culture of agricultural society. And this is something that Rafat is also a gay artist, and of course was rejected, not of course, but he was rejected by other Arabs in his town in Jaffa, so he mainly lives in Tel Aviv now. So it might be an aboutness that talks about his problem of being an Arab, lives in a city, but is expected to live according to traditional values. Another interpretation might be Another aboutness is what is meaningful is the space in which the action takes place. Rabin wished to bring peaceful connection between Arabs and Israelis. The Arab artist is in action, carries forward Rabin's as yet unfulfilled wish by the care he takes alongside the olive tree. He doesn't let Rabin's wish to be forgotten. He nurtures Rabin's dream with its hope for peace. So this is another aboutness of this work of art. It is important not to leave aside the viewer response that this work is the protest of an Arab artist vis-à-vis the situation of Arab artists within the Jewish society. Finally, the actions and their ritual actions, not of agricultural work, of the tending of cemetery graveside, the watering of graveside planting, the sweeping away of fallen leaves and branches, rituals of cleanliness and nurturing and purification. All this cannot help but to bring to mind the unpresent Arab dead, their voices, the present at the center of this city. I will show you another. This is the components I will go. Okay, so I would like to hear your reactions and questions and to answer. Yes. Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I'll answer you. I have to say first that it's really not good that I give a lecture on the dialogical process, because normally we had to do it in a dialogue, and usually I do it in dialogue. It's only because my English, I don't trust so much my English to lead a conversation like this. But most of the time, people are talking and not me. I only give the question and then they talk. And I think that by the way that I emphasize all the time that we have more than one aboutness, and we have more than one association and one representation, there's a place for everybody. So if you want to see this work as in a nostalgic way, you have your place. If you want to say that this is completely political work, you have your place. And I think the form of the list, giving a list, enable people to just to feel free to add something without, how do you say, erasing the former one. You don't have to win in this dialogical, because from the beginning I say we have many aboutnesses. It could be this or this or this or this, and the good work of art has many aboutnesses. So this way, there were not. It wasn't a. It was a quiet conversation actually about this work of art, but it was very interesting to hear the Arab people talking about it. Of course, yeah. Yes. Yes.
This is about visual literacy, but I was really influenced by the music. That music that would be familiar to both the Arab students.
Yeah, I asked Rafat why he doesn't give the translation of the words, and he said it's not important. You hear it and you know that it's an Arab song, and you don't have to understand the words. He didn't want to translate it for me. He said, just listen to this. This is the background. It's an Arab context. It gives something, and it's not important. But of course, everybody in Israel recognizes the music as an Arab music, of course, and the language. Yes, please.
Can you speak a little bit about the importance of the order in which your 7 questions are delivered? Is there much flexibility within it, or really should be followed as you suggested?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I train students to work like this, I prefer to have the order. I ask them, but much more than important, the importance of it's not so much, the order of the questions is not as important as the knowing that I'm now in this stage. So sometimes you can inverse the stages, but you have to know that now you are in a stage of representation and now you're So sometimes when we worked in schools and my students work with different classes, I used to come into the class and they told me, I'm now in stage 3, I'm in stage 2. This is the being conscious of what you're talking and of where you are in the process. And as I said before, they merge, the stages merge. And once you talk with a group, if it happens in a museum, once you have the whole stages on one work of art, when you move to the second one, you don't need to do all the 7. The children or the adults naturally compare the 2 works of art and they speak about it not in the order that was in the first one. And usually it's good only, it works, and it's important only for the first art, the first work of art, to show them what is the orientation of the conversation. That it's not just a dialogue, a conversation, but we have a mission here. We want to reach the aboutnesses. And this is exactly what I lacked so much, disappointed me, what I said about the language of art, that you have so many components, but finally you don't arrive to any aboutness. You stay with the description. You describe and you describe and you describe. But finally, I believe that an artist has something to say, something has an aboutness. He wants to say something. I can say also that I think that the language of art was born, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was born with Kandinsky, and it was mainly, its mainly goal was to describe and to understand abstract art, and it works beautifully with abstract art. But as we reach contemporary art, a work like this, it doesn't help us anymore. Yes, please.
Is the process of word-based something like whoever with language?
No, I wouldn't say that. I saw yesterday a talk. I was in New England, and I saw a talk in a small museum with children with a work of art that there were words in it, text, and images. And the text is one of the components, of course. So you have, in Babaku, it's exactly that. You have an image and you have a text. And the text is also a kind of image. So you also talk about the image of the text, not only the content of the text, but the visual aspect of the text, of course. It becomes one of the building blocks of the work. Yes, please.
Can you speak a little bit about how
Yeah, we tried with my students, we tried it with children, very small children. Of course, with small children, you have the part of the associations and what it leads you to. It's much bigger. But it's interesting that we can come to an aboutness of a work of art. Small children, I say only school. I didn't try it with smaller than school age. So in Israel, it's 6, 7. So these are the smallest that we worked with. And they arrive to different aboutnesses. Sometimes it's not the aboutnesses that an adult will give, but still, it's a process that leads them to a kind of conclusion. Can you give me some reactions, not questions, just to understand if you think that this model is useful, if you can use it, if you already use something very similar to this. Just want to know, I don't know what's going on in here. Yes, please.
Yeah, I found it really interesting, visual images, the water and the man carrying the bucket. But when they showed that far distant image of the tree in the middle of the city, it just made, wow, this is totally different than what I thought it would be. So I found that really fascinating.
Yes, it's I think also that it's a very good work of art. It's very good. Yes, please. Thank you so much for sharing this. Yeah, this is. I didn't expect anybody here to have this. Well, in my class, there were 3 or 4 people who really came from Arab villages, and thank you. Yes, please.
My reaction is more to your
Yes, and if you know, as you can notice, it was a very short demonstration now, but sometimes there are many associations of people in the classroom, but some of them will not lead us to the next stage, will stay there. If I have an association, if I see the red sweater and I say, my mom has a red sweater, it's a good association to go into the work of art because I have to go into it through my own experience. But sometimes it's not relevant for the next stage. It might be not. So it's up to the teacher or the docent to really to lead the conversation and to see what are the associations that I don't want to say good, but will serve the next stage, will be good to develop an aboutness. But I don't criticize, never, personal associations like my uncle used to knit something, or I had a cat, or this kind of associations that sometimes look very remote, very not relevant to the work of art. They are the means, they are for the person, it's the way to go into the work of art. So it's okay. It's time to finish. Okay. Thank you very much.